The movie starts in the city. Built only of plastic. Presents Ted, who is playing with his plane, but what is inside a house? You knock on the door and we are presented with another. Ask if he lost his ball, but he tells you that this time it was one plane to another, and invites to his house and shows him a painting that she made, asks you what are and audio, and tells him that they are trees and that his greatest wish is to see a real one. He brings you back to his house and he is eating gelatin Tesla. You ask your mom where she can get a tree, but she says that the one he has is better, while her grandmother tells her that she has to look for ever the what's the man who knows what happened to the trees, asks you where she finds it, and grandma says that out of town and must have 15 pennies, a nail and a shell of a grandpa snail. Ted is on his way and headed out of town, presses a button and the stairs start to come out. Pearl starts to rise and opens the door. To be able to leave we go to a balloon blimp and Mr. Roger, which he has as a business or sell bottles with air. He says he wants more pollution in order to have more sales. Arrive the security and show an alert about someone coming out. He gets angry and says nobody. You should go out and investigate it, while that we see Ted following the path to be able to leave the city and manage to arrive outside. Ted is surprised to see that there is no tree left, but it continues its journey in search of. Once Ted begins to cough due to contamination and achieves dodge some kind of trap, comes to a cliff, and it occurs to him to use a piece of wood as Ted ramp starts to accelerate, and it goes with great speed, but we see that it did not work and it begins to drive up the mountain to the other side. Ted continue their journey and we see no entry signs, but does not make them case and starts walking through the mist until you get to a house. It's your turn. Doorbell and a kind of mechanism. They begin to ask him who is and tells him to go test them. Shows the offering and is caught by a lever. Asks you about the trees and he says that because of him he disappears, and begins to tell his story of when he was young. He traveled all over the world, obsessed with finding the material perfect, and one day he arrived in paradise. Once he got excited and said he would use the true hula tree to create your invention. He opens his carriage and begins to take out different objects harming animals. So we see that everyone gets angry and an animal attacks him by breaking his bag of marshmallows. All start eating and what they forgive, but suddenly interrupts and says tell the part of the tree at once. Continues its story and we see that he cut down a tree of Truffle. All the animals left and he took the tree. He says that by cutting down the tree summoned a mystical creature called him. Now we begin to see that the sky clouded over and lightning struck trunk. After that appeared lords and he was very sad when he saw that they cut down a arrow. So he went up to him and said, out of the forest is presented as Lorax, the guardian of the forest, but he does not. He listens to him and he the marshmallows now that he says he will take it, but that he offends a lot. Once he says no, he will go and cut down all the trees. He goes inside his base and we see that he was there. Now he tells him to go away before sunset or all the fury of nature will fall on him. Begins to say that he ignored her and that he returned tomorrow to hear the rest of the story. So Ted leaves, while that we see others celebrating their birthday. Suddenly we see Ted and he pulled back a curtain showing her a tree. Really she is about to kiss him, but we see that Ted was imagining it. He tells you that he has to go, but his mom, she stops him since it's Sunday and they will play board games. His mom goes to her room and his grandmother tells her to go with him. Once you start to go on your motorcycle, but the employees of the Mr. Rog suddenly comes to a car, and we see Mr. Roger begins to ask why you are interested trees since they affect the business of him. The sir or here does not threaten and tells him that he's got party eyes and he doesn't try leave again. Mr. O'Hare say he returns to his car and the place leaves. We see that Dad ignored him and went out again from the city. That returns to his house once and he wants to hear the end of the story, asks if he does it for a girl, and Ted replies that if he a time continues the story, and we see that he knitted his invention which he called Sniff. Once he goes to sleep and we see that they enter his house and start to fuck him. Take the now that he tells them to have. Be very careful and take it out the window. His donkey appears and bribe him with a apple. Will start to take the bed and they leave her on the water, but she stayed a little bear for what they say they will rescue him. They begin to follow him and the fish. They try to stop but we see that they don't works. They hang from a tree but the little bear is distracted and grabbed an apple. Bed heads to a waterfall, so he made them turn around and wake up some. Maybe the oracle says they have problems and that they are about to fall. Try to go back but it doesn't work. Now wind a stone and hit them, sending them to fly. Lorax is surprised and he thinks I killed him, so he uses two bears and shocks him to save him. Once he thanks the Lorax and says that he will no longer cut down another tree a day. Next we see that the now arose with him once since it was cold outside him. Once he says that he will go to the city to sell the sniff of him, but he now says he is crap. He once said he's a revolutionary product and that has a million uses. The once out of the house and starts playing the guitar in the city, but they throw a tomato at him and everyone laughs at says he didn't sell it the first day, and we began to see that he keeps trying to sell his sniff but he just threw tomatoes at him, so a day he resigned and through the sniff of him fell a woman, and we see that he liked her while that now that he is playing cards. He once told her that he couldn't sell his sniff. Him once start preparing pancakes and feeds them to the animals. He starts shaking, so they leave the house and see that they come to a lot of people start singing. Everybody wants a sniff since they know. They realize that it can be used in many ways. Everyone comes close sometime and he says he will sell more sniff. We go back to the present and we see Ted carrying his grandmother to the supermarket while another and arrives at his house with new paint. And we see that Toy erased the paintings of him. The exit arrives but Mr. Roger hid the button, so he goes on his motorcycle and climbs up a wall into the bathroom of a man who leaves the house and continues the trip up a building to reach the exit. Begins to fall into the motorcycle and manages to leave the city. Returns to the house of Once and I Take Him Marshmallows. The Once continues its story and we see that a house is coming. Trailer on the way. The door opens and go down the family of Once. They say that will work for him and we see that the house trailer becomes a house fully equipped now that it is. He gets angry and tells them they have to go. Once she tells him no and that he will knit more Smith, so now he's leaving. Sad him and began to design a factory snow while his family harvested foliage from trees. His mother tells him that he is very slow and that they should cut down the trees at once. He accepts and we see that they began to cut down the trees. The now that runs worried, but a woman catches him and he says that he broke his promise to the woman. He throws and now that he flies out. Once he says he's not bad and then he goes out at his house. He begins to change clothes and the oracle tries to stop, but we see that he did not succeed and that they began to cut down the forest at once. He built his factory is neither which caused the end. From the trees the factory stands, working at high speed while the forest disappears. We see that the one time he has sold millions of sniff and that he plans to build his own city of gold. That he is out of his office and ask if he is satisfied yet, but he tells her to go away and that he will follow. Cutting down the trees, suddenly we see that a machine cut down the last tree and that the forest was empty and the animals, they begin to leave the forest in search of a new home. He once takes off his hat and we see that now that he is leaving back where it came from appears a rock. He says unless you tell him that if it was his fault. He once said that he doesn't know what it means unless and lets fall a kind of seed that takes the seed and says it is the last seed of truffle and that you should plant it. He returns to the city and hides from the cameras, throws his helmet at him and takes advantage to leave on his motorcycle, but we see that the camera saw that it brings a seed. That he arrives at Audrey's house and tells her to go to his house. Ted enters through the window and his mother puts the seed on the table. Speak, so the room comes out and we see that water falls from the seed, lowers you the stairs, and we see Mr. O'Hare in his house. Ted's mom goes to the kitchen while O'Hare asks for the seed of tea. Tells him no, so they go up to the room, but when you enter we see that the seed disappeared. Its mother, she comes to the room and tells them to go away. You look for the seed, but we see that he has his grandmother gave it to his grandson. And we see that to another and came to the house that he shows her the seed and she is surprised and says that they should plant it. They climb to mom's car and they're on their way. But they begin to follow the mother. Realizes why she speeds up and she starts to drive away, but the driver turn on the nitro and they go big speed up to crash. The mom comes out of the road and we see that the sir approaches her and we see that she came alone while the others go in the Tate motorcycle, but they also come following. Mr. Roger jumps off blimp and begins to follow them back to appear the other vehicle, and you manages to dodge, causing it to collide with Mr. Roger. Goes up an elevator and Mr. Roger sees them with binoculars. He pulls out a gun and shot them a hook. But he dodges it, laughs and moves a fan, causing it to fly. Seed begin to go after her and we see Mr. O'Hare falls into a jug. He grabs it but his hand gets stuck in it. That Tit takes advantage and in the jug with the seed arrive at the main park and Grandma uses a machine to make a hole. Looks like O'Hare again and starts to say that trees are bad to another. And she says it's a lie, but we see that everyone believed him for what he knew. They get on the machine and start crashing against the wall until it is destroyed. People come and see that there is no trees. You start to say they should to plant the seed. All people, they begin to support him and go to plant it. Tries to stop them, but we see that he did not make it while he once thanks Ted. We see that planted the seed and to another and gives him a kiss. Ted Grandma watered the seed and we see that little by little it began to grow and that the trees turned him. Once he leaves his house and begins to water the plants, suddenly we see that the now former he goes back down once he gets happy and gives him a hug. So ends the movie. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like and comment with more movies. Would like to see. Greetings on the channel of this video are for Lazaro in the Taurus or Smart Suarez in my Rose Starlin. Jesus and for Stephen. Do not forget to comment. Those who want to go out in the next video.